Retirement seems so complicated. I mean, you have Roth and traditional and 401ks and HSAs and the rules for this and that and more acronyms with more rules that seem to change every year and no real rhyme or reason behind any of it. And even if you figure it all out, it takes 40 plus years to get you there, if you get there at all, which, if we're all being honest, most of us probably aren't going to get there doing it that way, because that's what we're seeing out playing in real time. Screw all of that. I don't want anything to do with any of that. And I didn't do it that way. I chose a completely different way. So let's discuss putting retirement on easy mode, as I'll give you a very simple way to retire far quicker and easier than the traditional way. And if you want to retire quicker and easier, make sure you like the video if that's what you want, and subscribe to the channel if you like content about financial freedom and retiring early. So let's kind of define the traditional way first before we jump into the simple and easy way. Now, the traditional way is basically a 40-year time horizon or so, give or take 5 years. Basically, you invest 15%, and of course, then you got to pay those folks who manage your money, quite poorly, by the way, an additional 2% a year. And eventually you do that over time, and you're 65 and you collect Social Security and all this other things of that nature. And maybe you're able to retire, but probably you're still behind. But that is the model. That's kind of the general construct that the traditional way of retirement works around and is based on. I don't know about you, but dealing with all the different acronyms that you have to deal with in order to get yourself to that traditional retirement, plus having to wait 40 years forward, and on top of that, you got to kind of depend upon our government for a lot of that as well, which I personally don't trust them at all, regardless of what's gone on in politics and everything else. Let's look at something that's much easier and a shorter way to do it. And it's a simple way to retire using the 5-step process that we teach in the blacklist that we've been talking about here on this channel. It's the pinned comment down there for anybody interested. But we'll kind of talk about the blacklist at the end for those that kind of want somebody to walk through the entire process with them. Now, before we get to the 5 steps, we kind of have two, there's actually more than this, but I'm going to give you guys the big 2 that you got to have. The first one is you have to have a how-to attitude instead of constantly throwing up objections. And I know we've talked about this in prior videos for people that I avoid, and I'm sorry, this is another one of those things. If you're sitting down and you're thinking, oh, I can't do that because of this, oh, because of that, what if this happens, what if that happens, all that sort of stuff like that, instead of figuring out that's possible, how do I get around that? How do I overcome that problem? How do I overcome that particular objection? When you have that how-to attitude, you're going to win big and you're going to do great. And this process will actually make you able to retire faster and easier than everybody else following that traditional path. If you play the other game, well, then go to the traditional path there and you'll probably what if that thing to death too. So don't do that. Come with a how-to attitude. That's the first big requirement. And the second one is you have to not give a crap what anyone else thinks. You just can't, guys. It doesn't freaking matter if your family judges you, your friends, your coworkers, whatever the case is. If you're seeking that approval, if you care what they think at all, you're going to fail, and this isn't for you, and you need to go that traditional way as well. So those right there are kind of the 2 big requirements. But let's jump into the 5-step process to actually doing this. And the first one is to lower your expenses. Guys, here's the honest truth. Virtually every single person that comes to the blacklist program that we had, either in the pilot program or in the actual one that we have live right now, every single one of them, whenever they actually sat down and just filled out the simple, budget tracker, financial tracker per se, were shocked that they were either barely making it every month or they were actually upside down. And then when they started looking at their expenses, they were shocked at the $20 here, $30 there, $50 there, this much going out to eat, getting drinks with friends, whatever the case was, added up to thousands of dollars of waste every single month in their budget. So simply lowering those expenses or cutting out a lot of the fluff absolutely lowered their expenses significantly. And that's kind of the first part of lowering expenses, right? You can do things like change your commute and move altogether, lower that housing expense. There's a lot of different things that you can do in order to continue to lower those expenses as you work through it. Of course, there's some stuff you can cut out immediately. And then there's other things that kind of, hey, you can work the next year on cutting those things out as well. The reason why I harp on expenses so much is because retirement is 2 sides. It's the asset side that funds your expense side. And the lower you get your expenses, the less assets you need in order to fund that lifestyle, which of course means you get there quicker because you don't need to build up as big of a base, right? Instead of needing $5 million, you may only need $500,000, depending upon your living expenses and how you're able to lower those. And more importantly, whenever you're lowering these expenses, It also allows you to invest more over here into assets that will then cover those expenses. So it's kind of working on two different sides. Not only do you need less, but instead of keeping your original budget, now because you've lowered your expenses, you can actually invest more. So you may actually hit the higher number that you needed to begin with, but you would have never been able to do that because you're able to invest so much more at the beginning instead of being in the opposite scenario where you need this massive number, but because you're spending so much, you're not putting enough over here to actually get to it all together. So it almost like works double ways. I don't know how else to describe that. The point being, not only does it help on one end, it's actually helping the other end as well. So you're getting twice the effect for making the one move of lowering your expenses. Number two, start a side hustle you love. Look, I know people get upset about side hustles. It has kind of a good and a bad rap, kind of depending upon where you fall and what type videos you want to watch. But the fact is, if you start a side hustle that you love, sure, it may not make money the first year. It may not make money the second year, but at some point in time, you're going to make just a few $100. Maybe it's $1,000, whatever the case is. And if you understand the power of compounding, just having a side hustle that just makes an extra $500 a month, an extra $1,000 a month, whatever it is, can make a massive difference over here on this asset side that we've been talking about there. Or it can actually start moving towards replacing your income with something that you love that it doesn't even, maybe you retire from traditional work and you just simply work your side hustle because your assets are spinning off enough and your side hustle is spinning off enough to sustain you. But more importantly, it doesn't feel like work. You're doing something that you love. And when you do something that you love, if you really take kind of a business approach to it, if you're kind of minded that way, if you're, your mind's kind of wired that way, you can turn it into something that can make more money than you ever dreamed of making over here at your traditional job, because that's how business works in general. It's always, you don't become, Elon Musk and all these other folks like that. They did it because they built businesses, not because they worked a job, saved and invested and got themselves there. So it really allows you to kind of accelerate both ways in a sense, if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to put in the work there. But even if you don't, and you just want to treat it as simply a passion project or whatever the heck you want to call it there, it can still provide enough income to maintain your lifestyle well into retirement. Number three is house hack. Look, I have not paid a mortgage for more than a decade now, and I don't think I could ever go back to ever having to pay for housing. Look at your budget right now. Take whatever you make and pretend as though you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay a mortgage. You don't have to pay that expense at all, and take that money and invest it and tell me how it flips your finances in 5 years. It makes an incredible, life-changing difference in regards to that. And that's just house hacking once, just simply for your own living situation. Imagine if you did this over and over and over again. It's a different topic for a different time here. But house hacking was the biggest key for myself to having that huge leg up in regards to financial freedom. Not only does it lower my expense column, right, significantly. So if you're already doing, cutting expenses, cutting out all the silly spending, cutting out all that sort of stuff, and on top of that, now all of a sudden you're able to eliminate your house payment as well, therefore lowering that expense even more. Now it's just kind of the sky's the limit in all kinds of ways. Now the whole world basically opens up in regards to investing, in regards to moving your finances in an incredible direction the other way quite quickly. And that's if you just do it once, much less over and over and over again, like kind of like the stack method or a few other methods like that that are out there. So house hacking is key to having a simple and easy retirement, because man, once all of a sudden you don't have to pay for housing anymore, it really, really opens up the possibilities, and obviously is a huge relief in regards to your finances overall. That allows you to do number four, which is eliminate your debt. Now, I'm not going to get into the discussion here about good debt versus bad debt and things of that nature. I think we all kind of know what that is. But bigger picture, if you have debt out there because you're cutting expenses, because you're house hacking, you can use a good chunk of that money to start paying off a lot of the unnecessary debt. Of course, I'm all about getting rid of car payments, goofy stuff like that, obviously credit cards, everything else like that. Get rid of that crap immediately. If you're planned out and part of your retirement plan is to have your house paid off altogether, you can start paying for that as well. Remember, somebody else is already paying your bills there. So you can just basically put that money strictly to principal there. And then of course, now your house hack turns into something where you're getting paid every month once you pay off that bank note. So that's an even better situation to be in, right? You're no longer having to worry about just paying the bills and obviously I got my housing taken care of. No, now all of a sudden you're getting paid to live in your house. And, depending upon where you live, not a little, maybe $500, maybe even $1,000 a month, you're getting paid to live in your current house. That's the power when all this stuff all starts combining together and starts to kind of roll down. And, it's basically kind of like a snowball. It just kind of all starts to snowball into more and more and more assets over here in this column, which leads me to the last one, which is invest the rest of that money. So obviously you're coming over here, you're building up this asset side. And as you start eliminating debt, as you house hack, as you get rid of all the silly expenses, the amount you can invest grows more and more and more. And it becomes fun at that stage. Now, maybe you want to invest in the stock market, but maybe you don't want to put in that work, man. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of stress with all the up and down nature of the stock market. Hey, great. Maybe when you house hack, you got the real estate bug. Great. Move into real estate investing there. That's an awesome way to go. You can also invest in all kinds of other things, such as maybe you decide to expand your side hustle into a full-time gig. Maybe there's room for expansion there into something you love. Maybe you choose to do something like personal investing. That's something we talk about in the blacklist there in regards to another way to earn an incredible yield on your cash by essentially lending out money short-term to other investors in your area. In the end, there's all different types of ways that you can invest. And when you do these things, you have the capital to get out there and invest the rest. So once you build all this up and you build up your asset base to where it can more than cover your expenses, at that stage, you're in a spot where you can actually retire at that stage. No waiting 40 years, unless you take 40 years to implement this entire process, then I guess it does. But no 40-year time span. And more importantly, it's relatively stress-free. You're not doing anything crazy. You're not doing anything wildly, you're not getting out there trying to start the next Tesla and, things of that nature. You're not doing any of those sorts of things. You're just taking practical steps to get yourself in a spot where in a very short time frame, definitely a lot shorter than 40 years, you're able to retire with very, very minimal work and kind of basically the easy mode in regards to getting there. And if you want a complete system that lays all this out for you step by step, and you want somebody like myself and our experts that we actually have in the blacklist group helping you, being able to discuss your plan, going back and forth, getting on our live streams, discussing those, obviously making posts, basically getting all the tips and tricks and every single nuance with everything, house hacking. We got a complete course on that. And of course, you can also talk to me as well about your specific situation, how to make it better, how to, improve yield, work through all your numbers, work through everything in regards to putting this all together and getting yourself to that financial freedom, whether you want to retire overseas, maybe you don't, maybe you want to stay here, States or wherever the heck you live. That's okay. We have a complete system for doing just that right where you're at. Or maybe you want to go a more sustainable route. You're not really trusting the government. You want to know, hey, what happens the next time we have a pandemic? I want to be able to take care of myself. I don't want to have to depend upon anyone. Well, that's where the sustainable retirement comes into play. And we have experts in there that are doing that. And we have a complete system for that as well. So make sure you check out the pinned comment where founder spots are still available. You get free lifetime access and a ton more. It's the pinned comment down there for those interested. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.